Now, this time of year I've got a few friends at Fishing Island, and a fly many years I came up with, many years ago, there was this fly here. This is a wet fly. It's called, they actually called it the McPhail Mayfly, even though I didn't name it, but it basically originally tied for a gentleman that I used to work with in trout and salmon, and basically he was going to Ireland and he wanted a fly to represent the dun, the mayfly coming off, and the dun is a very kind of olive light coloured, and this is the fly I tied it to sort of nymph light with the dubbing on the front, and used basic colour combinations that much that I would use in smaller nymph patterns and wets. But from that then started tying more of a dry fly. This is a dry fly tied totally with CDC and tied in this case here with the wing, the French Patches dyed yellow, so you have that. And then in this one here, the wing has a bit of basically dyed mallard flank. So there's quite a few variations, but the most popular would be this one. Now in this one here I've used a brown CDC, this colour. It's basically a brown for the wing, but you can darken the wing. There is times you need a darker wing so you can see it a wee bit better. And I'll show you the darker version, and in the darker version I'm just using natural CDC. This is quite dark, these are large feathers. Not black, but quite dark. Now thread, I'm just going to use the same thread. Thread I'm using is a uni thread in chartreuse. It could be yellow, it could be olive. So again, it's up to yourself what you like. Now in the wet fly I'd use the Kamasan, the B175, but on the dry version I use the B170. Now I'm going to show you the difference. This is the 175 for the wet fly. See, it's quite a heavy hook. This is the 170. You see, it's the same size but lighter. So it's just so it sits better in the water. But you could get away with the 175 though. I have tied them on the heavier hook, but to get the fly to sit easier, use the lighter wire. So see, this is a B170 size 10. For the tail, you could use quite a few fibres. Now this one here is a dyed lime green, believe it or not, natural cock pheasant tail. You can see it's what I used in the original fly and what I'm going to use in this. But you see, you can use a different fibre. You could use whatever you like. It lasts maybe a wee bit longer, but the guys I tie for prefer the pheasant tail. So it's not the strongest fibre in the world, but they like it, so I'm not going to change. Now it's quite simple. You start with thread of the eye. Just take the thread down halfway and remove the waste piece, and then come back up halfway to there, and that will give us the position for the wing. Now the wing, as I say, I'm going to use some natural grey CDC feathers. Now well, I've got two large, or two medium sized feathers would do. You can see I've got them, so they're curving away from one another. The outer edges is the inside of the feather, so it naturally curves away. Gives more a wing effect. And the length of the wing, you're looking round the length of the hook. Tie that forward of the eye, just tie it on top. At this point you can check just to see the length's correct before you go any further. If you think it's a wee bit short, you can increase it. Once you're happy, then you can tighten up. Just spin a couple of turns in front just to lift, see how the fibres are sitting. You can use the CDC, which will lift these feathers and pull them back. And then what I like to do is come in from the top slightly and cut at an angle, so it's a taper cut towards the back of the hook, and then we can run down, tying in these cut ends. And as you can see, the taper cut, you get a tapered sort of body with the thread. It just naturally tapers. Tail, now I'm going to just slightly by the bend, just slightly, so you like maybe 2 or 3 turns by the barb. Tail could put 3 in if you want, and the natural would have 3. But I'm going to exaggerate the tail by having a couple extra, so there's 5 fibres there. Now tail length, you're looking at least the length of the hook and a wee bit, or to the size of the mayfly that comes off in your water, because they do differ in size all over an island. They can be smaller, they can be larger. Now the length of the body, round about, say 2/3 of the shank, say there. The rib of the fly, I'm using this. This is a neon chartreuse, it's a Uni-Floss. Now you can actually twist it apart, you get single strands, so lighter strands as I call them. Basically catch that on the side, and what I'm going to do is quickly run the thread up and back down just to secure them in, and then come back down. Now the body, this is the original patch that I used many years ago. It's just a light olive dyed rabbit. Very soft, dun-like, and this is what you need for flies like this. So pull the fibres off, mix them within your fingers, so you form your dubbing. Rabbit's very easy to dub. Just lightly dub it onto the thread. Keep some for the front of the head or the front of the wing. But originally what I put it on for was to give an impression of the part of the thorax as an emerging fly. So, well, that was the idea behind it anyway. Now you want a sort of tapered light body, so wind up, and then we drop more. It's not the tidiest looking fly in the world, but this fly makes up for it when you fish it. So now what I'm going to do here for the rib, I'm going to tighten up. Now the original wet fly had a palmwood grizzle olive hackle, but that being the dry, I'm leaving that off. There we are. Nice and tight. Trim that away. Now the CDC feathers for the hackle, or for the hackles, I've got 3 colours here of olive in a way. So you've got, basically this here is a honey or a yellow olive. You've got an olive itself, and then you've got a brown olive. And basically when we tie these in is in by the tip. This will give a mix of colour, which is similar to the actual French partridge dyed yellow. So all I'm copying is the colour that you would see in the French partridge when it's dyed yellow, believe it or not. And because it's got a natural grey, it goes that olivey colour. Now there's the 3 tips of the feathers drawn together, and then what I'm going to do is trim it. It's much easier, and then catch in. You see the distance I have between there and the wing, so you're only going to get like 2 to 3 turns either side. So I'm going to carry on down with the thread. You'll see the cut ends there, so I'm going to catch them in front of the wing as well, so they're well tied in. And then just wind, get as much out of these feathers as probably as you can. Now they will twist and turn with you all over. You may have to go back to get it to sit the way you want. Now what I'm going to do here is just draw the CD fibres towards the back. The stems of the CDC feathers are really thick, so you've just got to put up with it. So there's 2 turns there. Now I'm going to hold the wing, pinch the side of the hook, then grab the feathers. Now I'm pinching and holding the hackles at the same time there. Now all I'm going to get is probably a couple of turns. Now at this point make sure that everything's nice and tight. Now it's important as well, you try and get 3 CDC feathers the same length. If they're not, then you can trim them like I've done here. You see this is a natural length there. These 2 were slightly longer, so I trimmed them so they were all the same length. So it makes it easier. That if you've one short, you'll lose it halfway through winding. Now once you've cut them in with 2 or 3 turns, you can trim away the waste. Now that is quite thick. You can see there how the stems are really thick. But you must tie these in, because if you don't, they're going to pull out quite easy. So what I'm doing here is securing them in with nice tight turns. Now I have waxed the thread well before I started, and then tidying this area up, I'm just going to tie in some dubbing. sort of dub on some with the rabbit. Same material we use for the body. And we just form like a head of the fly. As I say, these are rough looking, but they make up for it when you start to fish. So you don't have to look the best to catch fish. So, and this is one of these flies that is quite rough. Now, obviously, whip finish. Show away the thread. Now there's your wing. So that the light goes onto that, you'll see it. Now what I'm doing here is just encouraging these CDC fibres up. Now you don't end up with a perfect body all the way up. You get a darker thorax, which basically you want that anyway. So if you want to sort of just keep it as it is, or you can trim. What it's simple to do is you can trim in to help a shape. Try not trim the natural CDC. I'm going to use a curved pair of scissors here, and then come from the top, just taking these down the back. You can trim CDC, a lot of people are frightened to do it, but don't worry, it's fine, it will still work. Now this fly needs to be soaked in some sort of floatant. It'll make it last. I use a muslin, I just rub it right into the fibres and the tail, so on, so that the fly sits nice. As I say, it's not the prettiest looking fly. You cast this out but in the water, this will look just as the naturals will, and it's a very soft presentation that whenever this fibre obviously touches the water, it'll give way to it and it'll sit nice on the surface. As you see, when the light's right, that grey mix and the other colours blend nicely together, and as you see, you can trim it a wee bit better, so you get that nice mayfly look. The CDC is representing the colours and the wing more than legs, so that's the blend and that's the mix. So I hope you enjoyed that. And then all we have to do, a wee bit of varnish onto the head all the way around. Make sure the eye is clean.